back to school. What are we calling it, Ben? What's the, the brand?
We'll call it Road to Return.
Road to Return, right? It was the Road to Return. And we just wanted to let you know that we appreciate all the input that we get from all of you and the what we get from the staff and through Jason, that we are trying to listen to what's going on and trying to adjust in this very unusual time, and a time where things are constantly changing. So we just wanted you to know that the board is working very closely with the administration. We take this very seriously, and we want to know that you know, we're trying to take all your input and make adjustments where we can. And we want to thank the staff for taking all of this in, you know, and nimbly changing based on what is happening, and doing the best for our students, your children. So that's, are we ready, Jay? Are we, yeah, you're muted.
I do that once a meeting, and so I've had my turn. So I made you the host, Mrs. Cahill. I just want to echo a couple of things that you said, that, you know, all of the teachers, we issued them a challenge to respond to a lot of concerns, and they've risen to that challenge yet again. And you know, it's not easy. This is not easy teaching. It's not an easy environment for anybody. And so we really do appreciate that. And I will say, you know, Valley View teachers, you know, kind of worked individually, and you know, the setup at the elementary school is a little bit different. So, you know, they all worked hard to revamp their schedules and make sure that we were offering the best that we can to our students. I will also say, though, at Wood Glen, you know, it's a little bit bigger challenge because there's a lot more interaction and interplay between different grade levels and different sections, especially when you're talking about special area teachers. And, you know, I will fully admit that, you know, we kind of came to them, to the special area teachers, with a challenge, and they are the ones that really developed a lot of the logistics of what we're going to talk to you about tonight. So there's no way we could have done that administratively without their support and their assistance. So I will get, because I see that he's here, I'll give a specific shout out to Mr. Kursar, who is kind of the unsung scheduling guru of the district. So whenever I have a scheduling challenge that I can't figure out, I go running down the hallway to Larry, and he usually does it much faster than I could have ever dreamed of getting it done. So I echo that, and I appreciate also the support of the board in helping me, you know, kind of put all these pieces together for tonight and for beyond. So with that, we'll get started. Mrs. Cahill, you want to share your screen?
Yes, I'm just trying to figure out which thing. I think I'm going to share this. Let's see if this works. So does that look right? Am I sharing the right thing?
It does.
Okay, good.
There you go.
Make it bigger. Is that big enough? So this is something that we already, Jason already sent out to you, but in case you haven't been able to look at it, we just wanted to quickly review it for everyone, and then we're going to spend most of the time answering questions. Jason talking to you about the plan. So what we've done is we've updated the plan, and as we said from the beginning, way in the beginning when we first started all virtual, that we would adjust as we go, and as we see things changing, we learn what's going to be better. And so we are trying to follow through with that commitment to constantly look at what's going on and adjust. So that was the latest plan that we sent out. And so what we did is we worked on, essentially we worked on Wednesdays, but by working on Wednesdays, we worked on the rest of the week. So we're looking at this schedule and adjusting to try to get to cover a little more content and to give the kids, to have them be occupied longer during the day. Now this is, everybody's class has been different. The two schools are different. So we know for some parents, you may already have been having a full day and everything's great, which is wonderful. But that wasn't the experience for everyone. So we're looking at how we, Jason and the principals looked at how things could be adjusted in the schedule to make sure all the kids are getting what they need. So in this packet, we gave you some sample schedules. These are samples. So what is exactly in here may change depending on what week it is or which teacher. And we broke it up into 4 different sections. We have Valley View. So we did 2 schedules for Valley View and 2 for Wood Glen. This one is for a day when the school is totally remote. So the day still begins at 9 at Valley View, the teaching, and we're trying to have them run what would have been normally if they were in school. I mean, kids used to be in school till about 2:30 or 3 o'clock. So we're working on trying to make it more like normal. And so that's this sample schedule. What they do from 1 to 3 may be different depending on the day of the week or which teacher, but we want to make sure the kids are engaged for that time period. And Jason, you could correct me if I'm wrong.
No, and I think, but I think I'll, if I can, I'm going to interrupt there and just say, you know, these changes, whether you're talking about Wood Glen or Valley View, whether you're talking about Wednesday or days when we're fully remote, or days when we have in-person learning for at least some of our students, the changes are about student engagement with their teachers. It is not about piling on more work. That's not our goal. It's never been our goal. It's about the interaction and the time that kids are able to spend engaging with their teachers, even if that is electronically. It's still our goal to have them connected to the adults as much as we possibly can. You know, I was at Valley View today and I joked with a couple people, and some of them are on here, so sorry, forgive me that you've already heard this, but you know, I said, when this is all over and when we are back to normal, I think I'm going to ban screen time for all kids for about 6 months. Because we want, you know, we want them to, we want to have live conversations with kids. Yeah. We want to laugh with kids. We want to interact in real ways. And we know that that's not always possible right now. So we want to recreate those experiences as much as we can with our kids. It's not about giving them extra homework. It's not about giving them extra assignment. It's about engaging with them and making sure that we know where they are with their learning and that we're giving them as much support as we can with their learning. So, right. As Mrs. Cahill said, these are sample schedules. And if you can kind of back up a little bit.
It's the first one. This,
by chance, happens to be a first grade, an example of a first grade schedule, right? So one of the things that you'll see when you look at in particular, the in-person schedules, lunch times are different for K to 2 than they are for 3 and 4. At Wood Glen, there's one lunchtime everybody has at 12:40. That's a little different at Valley View. We for a lot of logistical reasons, obviously, there's more involved in making sure that younger students are able to eat their lunches and things like that. So we split that out. But the schedule that's in front of you right now is a fully remote schedule. It happens to be a first grade example. If you looked at a third grade example or a fourth grade example, they may look different. And as a matter of fact, the in-person schedule, the next one that you'll see, is actually a third, fourth grade example of what their day looks like. So you'll see the same kinds of things that you would see if they were, if we were fully back to normal, this was a full class and everything else. This is typically on an early dismissal schedule. This is typically what you would see, that there's a period of language arts in the morning, a period of mathematics every morning, that there's either independent work or science and social studies kinds of things in here, that they're going to be doing some work on their own, and then they'll have their lunch and then they get ready and they travel home. The difference is what we're asking them to do now, and for Valley View, what we've asked them to do is do their specials in the afternoon when they get home. So for both Valley View and Wood Glen, we are trying to give as much flexibility in that special block or that cycle class block as we can to students. We have heard very clearly from parents that it's a challenge for a lot of kids that they go to school during the day. Even though they're getting home earlier than they normally would, till they get through that day where they're wearing masks, where they're sitting in separate desks. The logistics of the day are difficult. And so they get on a bus, they get home, and they're tired, they're done. So we understand that it's difficult for a lot of our students to get back onto another meeting with their teachers, in particular for the special areas, and complete those tasks. we've tried to design them in both places. And we have some work to do, I think, at the Woodglen, at the middle school level. We've tried to design those experiences so that although we want them to interact as much as we can, that for the actual work, that there's some flexibility in when that happens, that we're trying to group those kinds of assignments in week-long chunks so that if they're not able to access it on that time, on that day, at exactly that time, they still have an opportunity to interact and complete some tasks for those special area classes. So just know that, and if your child, if any child is struggling with that piece, with that coming back online, please reach out to those teachers, reach out to the art teachers, reach out to the music teachers, reach out to the health and phys ed people, and let them know that that's the case. We'll work with you in any way that we can. You know, there's limited bandwidth for everybody. They're working with a lot of different kids and a lot of different families, but please let us know what you're experiencing and we can help you as much as we can.
Right, so I'm not going to go through any more detail, but this is, like Jason was saying, these are samples. So if you look at your email to get an idea of what we tried to do, where we added time to the Wednesday day and that we added specials at the end of the day. So for Woodglen, this will give the kids an opportunity to actually live interact, as we said, with the art teacher or with the Spanish teacher. And if they're too tired to participate when they get home, we will have recorded things that they could do as well, right, Jason?
Well, some recorded and some
Yeah.
live, but there are always assignments that are in Google Classroom that they can access. And, you know, if they're, as I said, the important piece there is for you to reach out. If you're feeling that as a parent, we need you to reach out to the teacher so we can take a look at what we can do to support you in that.
Right. And then the last part was just, as we have been doing, we're adding on to our schedule of things that we want to try to get done, and the idea of about when they're going to happen. As you know, you asked in our last meeting, people asked about picture day, and so Jason and crew and team managed to get picture day on the calendar, so that's great. And as far as back to school night goes, we're calling it mid-year goal setting, and that is going to occur on December 9th. Is that for sure, Jason? We're definitely
That's
gonna
correct.
Yes. And it will be smaller Zoom meetings. Is that how we're going to do it with?
Yeah, so
teachers?
we will we'll utilize Google excuse me, Google Classroom for that, because that's a mechanism
right now.
and students are familiar with. So what we'll ask you to do is go through your child's account for that, and we'll do small Google meetings on that. And again, there's a reason that we called it mid-year goal setting, is because, you know, at this point, obviously in December, back to school night doesn't make a lot of sense, right? But we're asking our teachers to do there is talk to parents about what our objectives are for the rest of the school year. Obviously not on an individual basis per student, but just in general, here's where we're headed. These are the things that we're trying to do, and these are the ways that you can interact with your child and help support the goals that we have that we're setting for all of your children for the rest of the year, or for at least the immediate future.
And then as far as sports goes, we're still sort of evaluating that and evaluating what we could do based on the guidelines from the governor's office. And then good news, we are trying, assuming everything stays the same, Jason thinks we could get the kindergarten students in the 4 days a week full time starting in January. And then we will try to move that forward in other grade levels as the opportunity comes up.
Sure. So we are excited, and I will tell you that when I talked to the kindergarten teachers over the last couple of days about this, they were extremely excited, and frankly have been advocating for this for the year. We needed to make sure that we could do what we were doing well and right, but I think everybody recognizes, statewide, nationwide, worldwide, that our youngest children need the most intensive education experiences first. And so we are on track to be able to bring kindergarten students back 4 days a week, starting after the holiday break. Here's what I will say, that that's not without difficulties. And I think one of the biggest challenges to that is the fact that it may mean, I'm not saying, let me correct myself. It will mean that some students will need to change homerooms. So we're going to reach out to some parents. We're going to work with the kindergarten teachers in particular over the next few days to really take a look at those students who we feel would do well with the transition, those students who we really feel would struggle with the transition, and we'll reach out to parents to talk about that. What I will say is that when we looked at the total picture, even though we don't like to transition kids from one teacher to another once the school year has started, the benefit of a doubled amount of time in school, in person, outweighs the downside of that for the vast majority of our students. We're going to be cognizant of which students really wouldn't benefit from that, but that's our goal. And I think I don't see any reason why we can't get there. And as Mrs. Cahill said, once we do that, we're going to continue to look at first grade and second grade and beyond. And we'll do as much as we can, as much as space allows in our buildings. So we'll continue to move forward with that.
I think that was it. This is really a repeat of what we've already talked about. There's nothing new on here. So I'm gonna stop sharing, Jason, so you can, unless you want me to keep this up for any purpose right now, but.
No, I think we can stop the share, and then, certainly this has been posted on a couple different places. It was emailed to everybody. So if there's if there are anybody else that specifically has questions, I certainly would be happy to answer them. But again, look for, in particular for Valley View, Wednesday schedules look different every week, depending on where the teachers are in the curriculum, what they're doing with the kids, what they've gotten accomplished, what they haven't gotten to yet. So please look for individual information on the Google Classroom from your child's teacher. That's the best place to get up-to-date, accurate information about what's happening in your child's classroom, because the teachers produce that live in real time as they progress through the week.
Okay, thanks.
So there's only, I know, as Mrs. Cahill said, we want to spend the vast majority of our time answering questions tonight and getting questions from all of you. There is one other thing that I just want to point out, because it's been in the news, and there's been a lot of news today, as a matter of fact, about this. And I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. I also sent to you, and I have a copy of it here, that from the health department, from the New Jersey Department of Health, about COVID specifically, and about protocols and warning levels, et cetera. So the health department, the state of New Jersey, did increase the threat level, the risk level related to COVID in Hunterdon County and in most of the state, quite frankly, from yellow, which is a moderate risk, to orange, which is high risk. Let me be clear. That does not mean that schools are closing. It's not a mandate. It's not part of the recommendation at this point. It's a recommendation that you monitor. It's a recommendation that you look at it, but it is not a mandate to close, and it is not our intention to close. We have been, I think, and I'll knock on wood, we've been successful so far in not having a spread of infection in our buildings. I would like to think that part of that is due to the fact that we were very conservative at the beginning of the year in making sure that our ventilation systems were working, that we had everything in place. I know that it frustrated me. I know it frustrated everybody else, but I'd like to think that that is at least part of the reason why we've been able to keep people relatively healthy. Here is what that does mean, though. And then if you looked at this document, I would, if you are not doing it now necessarily, but if you get a chance to look at it later, page 13 of that document specifically talks about protocols for exclusions for people if there is an exposure. I'm not going to read into all of it tonight. There, I can answer questions about it, but it's in this document. But I will generally say that if there is a known exposure, when we are in this higher risk category, the health department, who's still the entity that does contact tracing and advises us on protocols, casts a much wider net of exposure and interaction when they do contact tracing. They also have a much lower threshold for what they define as close contact. Here's what that functionally means. That is that if there is a known case in a particular classroom, it is far more likely that entire class will be quarantined for a period of 14 days. It's not a guarantee, but it is highly likely that that will happen. So I just want to point that out. We're advised to be, from the nurses' offices, to be much more conservative with sending children home if they exhibit symptoms, and following those protocols. So it doesn't change the status of schools, but it does make the logistics more difficult, because the contact tracing is going to include more children, and it's going to be much more conservative in the calls that they make about closing individual classrooms down for a period of time. The other thing that it does, because the infection rate has increased in Hunterdon County, not specifically in schools, but across the county in general, contact tracing takes longer. We're talking about more people, we're talking about more kids, more students, more adults, and so it doesn't happen as quickly. And therefore, if we get word earlier in the day that we have somebody who has tested positive, it is likely that we will have the whole district shut down for the following day until we can get that contact tracing done. When I say shut down, please remember that I mean working fully remotely. It's not that we will close and just not have anything. We'll go to a remote schedule for that next day. They used to be able to get that done. You know, if we found out 7 o'clock at night or a little bit later, we would get that done. Now that's as early as 5 o'clock. If we find that out, we have to close for the next day. Okay. So with that, Mr. Damiano or Mrs. Cahill, unless I missed something, we can open it up to questions. So the one question that did come up, and I hope I'm being loud enough. If I'm not, please, there was a comment to me to be closer to the microphone, so I apologize. The other question that we did get was, when does the modified schedule where kids have specials in the afternoon at Woodglen start? I said December 2nd on the chart, which is the Wednesday, but we are ready to go on Monday the 30th. So we're gonna start implementing that on Monday the 30th. We would just ask for your patience, as there may be a couple bumps in the road for the first couple of days as we work through that schedule. It's one thing to do everything on paper. It's another thing to run it live and make sure all the pieces are in the right place. So we appreciate that.
I think it's important to, just in case people didn't read this, to reiterate that if you drop off at Woodglen in the morning, the drop off is now moved to 8:15, and we needed to do that to make this work, right, Jason? So
yes, thank you. So the drop,
we need to send that like a big message to everybody. 8:15.
We will send that out multiple times between now and the 30th. I promise. I know
I'll forget, and I'll be there.
Yeah, I will too. If we aren't getting a photo package, should we still have the kids go to the photographer for a yearbook photo? I don't know the answer to that, but I will get an answer to that, and I will publish that to everybody, so that everybody knows what to do.
That's a good question.
Good question. So let me go back, Mrs. Balzer, I'll open it up to you in just a second. Let me just go back to the previous question. For specials, are they both days at 2:15 for my child in school days? Yes, that's a consistent, the time is consistent across the board for schedules. Mrs. Balzer, if you want to unmute, you're welcome to ask your question.
Hi, yeah. First of all, I want to thank you for having this meeting. I think this was a meeting that most of us as parents have been yearning for since the summer. So thank you for doing this. I think it's great. But I had a couple questions. One, I was wondering, what is the basis for the movement towards more grades? So let's cross our fingers, kindergarten can get in there 4 days starting January 4th, hopefully. What are we looking at in order to move more grades in? And are we gonna do like kindergarten in Valley View and look at 5th grade for Woodglen and have, that's kind of my question. How is that gonna look, maybe, possibly?
So we're looking at every grade. The biggest stumbling block for us to do that is still that requirement that we have social distancing. So we can push what I did an analysis. I didn't get beyond fourth grade, to be honest with you. So I got finished with Valley View, where the numbers are close to working for most of the grade levels at Valley View in terms of bringing kids back more often. However, there are a couple of assumptions that underpin that statement, and that the number one assumption is that those students who are currently who have currently selected to be fully remote stay fully remote, because once, you know, we did ask the initial question of kind of why you would want to be fully remote. There's a portion, you know, if there are 100 students, there aren't, but just make the numbers easy. If there are 100 students who right now are fully remote, there's probably 20 to 30 of those students who have made that selection because they're concerned about infection, they're concerned about safety. They've, you know, people in their family, in their immediate household who are compromised in one way or another. And so it was a health decision for them. And so those students, we would assume, are probably going to stay in that fully remote status. There are a lot of other students and parents and families who made that decision based on the fact that it was a 2-day-a-week in-person schedule. And we fully understand that if you're juggling work and childcare and all of the factors that we all juggle, that's a tremendously difficult schedule. So there's a portion of the population that said, we're going to be fully remote because we can't bounce back and forth that way. Our assumption is that if all of a sudden that's not the case, that a number of those students may choose to come back into school in in-person learning. And so that presents a secondary challenge for us, where I can do numbers based on what I have in person right now. I know what capacity I have in my classrooms, capacity I have in some of my alternate spaces. But once you start to reintroduce other students into that, the numbers don't work as well. So those are the kinds of things that we need to work through. We need to look at our physical space. Can we add additional desks and still maintain the distancing? We do have shields on our desks, the plexiglass shields on most of them. And so that allows us wiggle room in that, but there's still an outer limit to what we can do there. So it's really based on, we're looking at every grade level, but it's really based on numbers. So if there's a particular grade level where we can do that and we can move forward with that, we will continue to do that. I hope I answered your question.
I think we have we have another question in the chat, Jason.
So previously the specials for Woodland were only on Wednesdays. How many days will they be moving forward? So the vast majority of the specials at Woodland will be on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. There are some things that happen on Wednesday. It's things like careers and financial literacy. And I know that Mr. Cursar and Ms. Naples are working throughout the whole week to intersperse music lessons, instrumental music lessons and vocal music lessons. Chorus is also on Wednesday if your child's involved in that. So it's a combination of things, but most of the cycle classes or specials at Woodland are Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
So more.
Much more, yes.
Not a lot of questions. People are thinking. Go ahead, Erica. Just keep your mic open.
Well, I was wondering, I'm not only concerned about my own children, I'm also concerned about the teachers and the strain that this has presented for them, having to juggle what is just, in my house, a complete circus. So I'm curious what the thoughts are on if we could maybe move, is there a possibility to move to more of a full day, whether or not it's virtual or something more full day? Is that a possibility at all? I didn't know if that would help ease some of the burden. I don't know what would ease their burden. I can't even imagine doing their job right now, but yeah, is that a possibility?
Yeah, so look, let me echo what you've said. It is a tremendous challenge. I'm married to a teacher who's on Google Meets right now with parents doing parent-teacher conferences, right? And incidentally, neither one of us is watching the dog, so if they bark, I apologize in advance. But look, so we not only do we look at how many days a week can we get kids in, we're constantly looking at how can we expand the day. I don't, right now, one of the biggest challenges, to be very frank, is a logistical challenge in that we share buses. We share transportation services with the high school. The high school dismisses at 12 o'clock. They have a challenge, and the primary reason that they dismiss at 12 o'clock is because of lunches. They don't have the capacity to feed the volume of kids that they have safely in their environment, which is why they end at 12 o'clock. Then they do, and I don't have a high school student, so Mrs. Cahill or somebody else can weigh in on this, but then they do other things when they get home from school, is my understanding.
They have sport afterward. The afternoon is for sports and other extra band
Right.
and other things like that. Yeah.
Right. So the way our contracts read with our transportation companies, with our bus companies, is that there's an amount of time that's an allowance between when they do that high school run, that 12 o'clock run, and when they do our afternoon runs. If we exceed a certain amount of time, so if we were to push our ending time back to the 3 o'clock, our normal dismissal time under normal circumstances, that there is a significant surcharge, because then they're considering it a separate, an additional bus run. Our buses, the total of our buses for the year is about $500,000. There's it wouldn't be $500,000 extra, but it would be significantly more if we were able to do that. What we're trying to do, and we did get that question, that specific question recently, we're trying to get that actual number nailed down from the bus company. I will tell you that it's several $100,000. So that's a challenge. The transportation piece is part of why we're not able to go to that full day.
I think it's important everybody know. I mean, we're working within this. We originally thought we'd be able to do our own day and go to 3 o'clock, and that really prohibited us from being able to do a full day. So that we have to work within that parameter right there, is that we can't run the buses at a different time, which stinks.
So the next one in line, Mrs. Springer, you had a question, please. Go ahead.
Hi. Yes, just regarding the specials at Valley View, is there any way that the teachers can post them either the morning of or, in advance? Because what I find is we're ready to go. On the days we're home, we're ready to go. Math ends at 1 o'clock and we want to move on to our special, and we end up having to wait a half hour. And then sometimes it doesn't happen. And I know the teachers say you have a whole week to do it, but the reality is we don't have a whole week to do it, because every day you have another special, and there's no way in heck I'm bringing that Chromebook out on Saturday or Sunday to do a special. So I don't know. I know the special teachers are very involved in dismissals and all of that. But if there's any way that they can post it, being that it's not a live meet anyway, specifically I'm talking about for second grade, but I don't know how the other grades are. That would be really helpful for us at home, or at least for me.
Thank you. So I know Mrs. Bell, I can see her on my screen. I don't know if you can, but I know Mrs. Bell is here. So we'll work with the special area teachers to adjust whatever we can to make sure that it logistically flows better for everybody. I don't see an issue with that. We'll just make sure that we kind of get ahead of the schedule for the following week. That makes sense.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
So and let me just, so when will your child's individual new schedule be given to them? They should be getting that within the next couple of days. We'll make sure that teachers discuss that and send that out on Google Classroom with the students. So for middle school, and that came from a middle school parent, whatever their flow of academic classes is not going to change. So if they have math first period now, they'll have math that first block on Wednesday. If they have language arts second period, they'll have it that second block, and so on. The cycle class schedules will make sure that the principals publish that to everybody by the end of, before we leave for Thanksgiving. The next question was, is it possible to transition to a full day and have specials in general classroom? So yeah, that was one of the things that we talked about, that Right now, there are some logistical challenges to that, basically mainly being transportation. But if that's something that we can work out and is something that we can do, we would obviously love to have our kids back full time. But we have to work within, some of these parameters. For students who currently attend the remote learning centers, will this be offered on Wednesday now that the academic classes will be taking place? Right now, no. Right now, Wednesday is being used to deep clean the buildings and to transition between cohorts. We are in the final stages of contracting with an outside service to provide additional custodial support. That should be in place within a couple of days. As soon as that is in place, we'll evaluate all of the cleaning procedures, when we do that, the timing of that. And if there is an ability, if we have the capacity within that to increase or to do some level of in-person learning on Wednesdays, we will certainly do that. It's a quick conversation with our director of buildings and grounds this morning. Just a few things that are not in place yet that we need to make sure we can do right and do well before we make any kind of change there. The only thing I would say is that keeping in mind that the infection rate, again, although it's not necessarily attributed to schools, it is increasing. And so we're certainly not going to back down on our cleaning protocols. If anything, we're going to enhance our cleaning protocols right now. And so we want to make sure that we do that well and safely. But if there's an opportunity to do that, we'll certainly make that change.
I think Mrs. Lamarca's question is next.
Yeah, so if full day is not possible, can special teachers teach in the general ed classroom but following an early dismissal schedule? I'm not sure I understand your question, but I will say that we will continue to look at that, the way we deliver specials, in particular at Valley View, to see if there's a better way to do it. But right now, the schedule that we have, the new schedule we have for Woodland and the new schedule that we have for Valley View is the only way we can do it currently, given the constraint, the other responsibilities that all the special area teachers have over the course of the day. This is the best way we can utilize their talents at this point.
Yeah, I'll just add that we didn't want to take away from academic stuff, because we actually looked at that. If we went to a half-day schedule, then yeah, you could squeeze everything in, but then we'd end up taking away from academics. So that was something that we didn't think we should entertain.
Yeah, we would have to shorten the academic periods in order to do that, and that was not something that we were willing at this time. Mrs. Weldon, you had a question?
Hi, I do. Thank you. Thank you so much for hosting this in this format so that we can actually speak to each other. I'm curious about the specials at Woodglen, and it's unclear to me whether there are multiple sections for each class. Like, for example, my 8th grader has financial literacy. So is there more than one financial literacy class happening on Wednesdays? And now will they be all together, all of those students?
Hold on one second. Let me get back to my schedules. So they are, so as of now, financial literacy and careers is one section.
Okay.
So they will be together for those two sections. The other, when I look at, like, for example, the one schedule that when you look at the presentation, the other cycle classes I gave you, I believe I think I did a Monday schedule. So on Monday, there's for 5th grade, there's library and art. For 6th grade, there's library, family living, and so on. So those are split out, but the financial literacy and the careers classes are combined.
Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure if the class was going from 10 kids to 30 kids then on a Google Meet.
They're not, I don't believe that they're separate classes now. I think they're whole classes now.
Okay, thank you.
And Dara, Mrs. Englert has a question. Hello. You have to unmute.
I know, sorry, it took me a while. Hi, Steph.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the specials, I have a couple of questions. One, so as an example, I have a 6th grader and her cycle is health, and it was once a week. So does that mean now she's gonna have health, or is it gonna be like music one day, health one day?
Sure, let me pull up, let me see if I can pull up a separate schedule, and I'll share it with you.
In a normal year, the kids would have health every day, right?
Correct, for a cycle.
So we're trying to get closer to normal.
It'd be great if she had art this time, you know?
I know.
Art is better than health.
Yeah.
All right, let me, I just bear with me for a second. I'm trying to pull up a schedule. Okay, so you said 6th grade, correct?
Mhm.
So there is, so the way this schedule is written, on Monday, 6th grade has family living, on Tuesday, the library, on Thursday, Spanish, and Friday, art. So
Tuesday,
don't-
family living is health, right? I think
yeah, family living is health. So I don't,
that's Monday.
what your child's specific schedule looks like will be sent to them, so they'll know that. They'll either get it through Google Classroom, or we can send it out en masse. But so there is variation over the course of the week, but look for that over the next couple of days. That should explain exactly where they need to be when. Wood Glen, we have a little bit less flexibility than we do at Valley View, but we're still asking the teachers to give flexibility. Again, as I said at the beginning, we know a lot of parents have come back to us and said, it gets really difficult to come back into it at the end of the day. We know that. So we're going to ask for flexibility there, but again, communicate with the teacher if that's a problem. But you should get that schedule over the course of the next couple of days.
So Jason, does it mean so they'll have one day of their special, whether in person, but are they going to
Right.
supplement other days with a recording or some other?
Well, they'll have assignments to do. They'll have things that they can work on the other days. But again, we're not, this is not about work. So we're not trying to overwhelm kids with this. It's about engagement with the teachers. And that it was about, we made a decision that we focused more on academic classes, and that's why we had to put that into the schedule. The downside of that is that they're not going to have as much contact time with the special areas. But it's still live question, which is why we wanted to, live interaction, which is how we wanted to do it. Does that make sense?
The other part, which I think you're saying to reach out to the teachers, but my child's on fully remote. So
Okay.
like that, it'll be hard for her to have like that long break every day and then go back on, because she'll just feel like her day is like super long without having like lunch or travel.
Okay.
So there will be that option to possibly start the special like right at the end of the normal day, or?
So I don't, let me work with the teachers and get an answer to that for you.
Okay.
There will be an opportunity for them to do some of the work, but I don't know that it will be, the teachers aren't available live at that time. So it can't be a
Okay.
live. with the
Only if
teacher.
it's recorded.
Correct. Right. And there will be times when they'll record it. It's not, that's not the primary source of the lesson. It's going to be live, but if we find that that's just not working for a variety of kids, then we'll start to pre-record some of those things.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you all.
Mrs. Lamarca, you had a question?
Yeah, I do. Hi. Is there any way that we could do a survey asking parents whether or not they want their children back in school, and do it more on like a marking period basis? I understand that people leave the state and they have to follow quarantine, but so that the numbers are more solid for what we know of what people would go back into the school, like
Yeah,
per marking period.
Yeah. Let me just, yes, Mrs. Lamarca, one of the things that we need to do in order to make sure that other than kindergarten, right? Because kindergarten, I know regardless of who's fully remote, who's not in kindergarten, we can make that work because of because of other logistical factors that we have in kindergarten and just our overall number. Beyond that, yes, one of the things that we have to do is say to parents, listen, if we're able to get your child's grade level back in more often, are you interested in doing that? Are you know, for those people who chose to be fully remote, would you want to come back into the classroom? Because that's going to really influence how much of that we can do. It's
Right.
already a survey that I have half written, to be honest with you.
Okay. Okay.
We just need to make sure that like I said, there are some things that we needed to clear out, make sure that we could do it with kindergarten, make sure that we have our cleaning protocols in place, et cetera. And then we'll move forward with that as quickly as we can.
Okay. Thank you.
If students already had a special in marking period 1, will they have special again each week? No, it should be a rotation out of that if they've already had it. Mrs. Balzer?
Me again. I actually was wondering, the drop off for Valley View is a big chunk of time, 45 minutes. And I wondered if we are looking at any ways to try to streamline that at all. I know that it's helpful for me because I'm dropping off at Wood Glen, et cetera, but I just think of these teachers having to be on duty, like with children for this extra 45 minutes that they never had to do before. I wondered, just to try to ease that time on them.
Yeah, I mean, so look, we designed those procedures initially based on a couple of things. I mean, based on keeping distance between cars and kids and buses, obviously, right, for safety. And to be very honest with you, a big part of that that time frame and the start time at 8 o'clock was really because we were responding to a need for parents to go to work. And we were trying to accommodate families that we know how difficult it is. And so, yes, I mean, we can reevaluate that if that's something, and that would be to Mrs. Lamarca's point before, that's something that we're going to need to survey parents about. You know, if that's something, you know, if people still need that, we may be able to figure out a different way to meet that need, still maintaining, you know, not mixing cohorts and social distancing and all of those things. But we have a fair number of kids. You know, we just, because of parent conferences today at Valley View, we had to hold the kids kind of out in the hallway, right, rather than putting them into the classroom when they started to arrive at 8 o'clock. And over the last couple of days, Mrs. Bell and I asked the teachers to give us submit the numbers of those kids that generally come in at 8 o'clock or between 8 and 8:45. And it was, you know, look, the buildings are kind of odd right now because when you look around the building, we're used to seeing them full. So right now they're not. And so it's hard to get, unless you actually collect those numbers, it's hard to gauge. It looked to us like it was a very, very low number of students. When we actually collected the numbers, it was a lot more than we thought that are coming in at 8 o'clock. Now, some grade levels, in some classrooms, it's 2 students. At other grade levels, it's 8 students that come in or 6 students that come in at 8 o'clock. So we need to do some assessment with the parents rather, to make sure that we know exactly what the need is. And if we can adjust it backwards to make that time more usable for teachers, certainly we will do that. So the question is, will the pre-K program have a chance at opening this year? I would love to say yes. I do not see a path towards doing that at this point. One of the things that we talked about today, and I'm going to send some information specifically to the preschool parents within the next week or so about all of this, but one of the things conversations I did have today with our business administrator, with our preschool teacher, Mrs. Hull, one of our preschool teachers, with the kindergarten teachers and with a number of other teachers, is that we know, and the board committee has talked about this as well, we know no matter, even if we were able to magically fully open up tomorrow, we know that there's a lot of time and interaction that has been missed for preschool, for everybody. And so one of the things that we're working towards and working on right now is some type of summer program next summer that is live, first of all, and that is available to general students, to general preschoolers, to all students. We'd love to be able to do it at all grade levels. So we're working towards that. The other thing that we are looking to do is, if we're able to use those Wednesdays, that in spring, as we get closer to the end of the school year, that we would like to do some sort of a program where we reintroduce our preschoolers to the building on a Wednesday, and in particular, those students who will be entering, those current preschool students who will be entering kindergarten next year, to really ramp up and get them back ready to the extent that we're able. It breaks my heart to not be able to bring preschoolers back in this year. I just don't at this point see that we can do it. So the question was, can we challenge the bus company, because it's an unusual time and we should be putting kids first. The bus company should understand this. Yes, they've been challenged, and we're going to continue to do that. We can continue to do that. I will tell you that that there are a number of executive orders in the state and nationally that dictate that no matter what happens as a result of this of the pandemic, that we still are required to fully pay and execute our contracts as they are written. And there is, in every transportation contract for every district, there's a clause about layover time and additional runs that's in the contract, that they are under the law fully enforceable. I'm not an attorney by any stretch of the imagination, but if we've obviously we have a board attorney, a school attorney, who has advised us, and as they've advised, as all board attorneys have advised, that we are required to fully execute contracts. Trust me, it makes me a little crazy every morning when I see buses that are significantly less than full coming in, and we're still paying those contracts. It is an executive order that we have no control over. Frustrating to us as well, believe me. Who will the fourth kindergarten teacher be? At this point, it is likely to be, and we haven't solidified it yet, so I don't want to overpromise here, but at this point it was likely to be Mrs. Hull, who was our preschool teacher. And so many of the children already know her, and she's aware of that, so I'm not, if she's on the call, she's not being surprised, I promise you. She and I actually talked about that today. Yeah, so you're right, Mrs. Segula. We do have buses that are significantly, as I just said, significantly less than full. Is there a way to rework the routes? There is. It's something that we can look at. However, the routes, they could become significantly longer, and it doesn't take away our commitment to still paying for all of those buses. So even if I could say, look, I have 14 buses and I can realistically get our kids on 7, we still have that obligation. It doesn't change that.
Still paying for it no matter what.
We still have to pay for it no matter what.
It's really not something we can we can't work around it in any other way unless everybody wants to drive their kids.
Right. Which I know is not realistic, obviously, right? And you've heard this, that some routes only have a couple children on the bus. You're absolutely correct. As I said, I watch it and I cringe because I know that what we're paying for them.
I think Mrs. Kramer's question was similar about the buses.
Yeah, did I miss one? I apologize.
Oh, I guess maybe she privately sent this to me. That was probably a mistake. It's the same story. A bus, I think she said that she's got a bus that comes in front of her house and drops off, and she never signed them up to take the bus. She signed them up to drive both ways, should this be happening.
So yeah, I mean, we have to, if there is an emergency evacuation, we have to have, and we're offsite, and we have to do what is all called our reunification plan. All students have to have a seat on a bus, no matter what, whether you choose to drive them or not. They still have to have a seat. Now, it doesn't mean that, you know, if we know for a fact that you're not taking advantage of that on a regular basis, that bus doesn't necessarily have to stop at your house. And if you want to send me an email about that, I'll double check that with the bus company to make sure they have that information. But every student in the district has to be routed on a bus, because if we have to evacuate and we have to reunify, one of the ways that we would possibly do that is that we would run every bus route home. We would not allow parent pickups. We would drive all of the students home, and we would put staff members on each bus to communicate, to physically hand off each student to a parent at the end of the day. For those of you, many of you probably were not here at the time, but a number of years ago, we did that when we had a bomb threat at Woodland. And we're probably 7 years ago at this point. And that's how we did that handoff. We did at that point allow parent pickups, but for those students who went on the bus, we had a staff member physically hand them off to each parent. It's an accountability piece in an emergency situation, but everybody has to be routed.
So we're actually at 8 o'clock. I can't even believe that. It went so fast. We were just gonna because I don't see any more questions. So Mr. Dabiano was just gonna speak for just a few minutes to talk about how we're gonna continue to communicate.
Yes, so in the spirit of sharing out information in as many platforms as possible to reach as many of you as possible in as convenient and accessible as a format as possible, we created lebtwphealth.org. Now, this is a mouthful.
You've got a mirror image showing up.
Oh, okay. I'll turn it upside down. There we go. With our most recent updates as presented this evening, our committee has reworked the content on the site to ensure that you all have at a glance the most up-to-date information that we have from the administration, from the state, and from the county. And more importantly, rather than having to remember lebtwphealth.org, we've got a new site address, which is wildcatstrong.org. Wildcatstrong.org. We've included in the update a dashboard that lets you know where our district stands and sits on the COVID-19 risk matrix scale, as well as active cases in our schools, no names, obviously, as well as the most recent documents as presented tonight, resources and salient updates to help all of us stay as connected as possible and to help us navigate this constantly evolving, revolving, devolving landscape that we find ourselves all in. So check it out, wildcatstrong.org. I will
Put it
be
in the chat
posting,
to everyone. So they can,
yeah, oh, thank you. Yes, and we'll also be posting that to Facebook as well. I just wanted to update everybody first before we, put it out on social media. And of course, always open to suggestions how it can be more effective for all of you. So there's a contact form that will go right to me, and then we will address any of your questions, concerns, priorities. It's a work in progress. So we want to do as much as we can to continue to communicate as clearly and in as many formats as possible. So check it out, wildcatstrong.org. Thanks.
And I will, just as a takeaway, thank you everybody for participating tonight. I'll get a question, some of the questions that came up tonight that I couldn't answer, I'll get them answered. So I'll get an answer on the yearbook photos and the intersection between regular school pictures. We'll talk to the special area teachers at Valley View about the posting, the timing of the posting for the special assignments and classes. And just a general, little bit more clarity on Wood Glen special schedules and who's when and where and things like that. And so I'll make sure that that goes out to everybody And then look for a couple of surveys about returning, surveys about, you know, a number of things related to getting more students back into school.
And Jason, Erica asked about how often we will be have these. How'd you do that? That's good, Ben. If we'll be having more, and I know that we locked out at 100, so there were other people that will want to participate. So you'll be sending out another Honeywell about the next one.
Yeah, so our goal is to do them bi-weekly at this point. So we have 2 that are close together. So our next one is next Tuesday, which quite frankly is not going to be dramatically different than this one, just because it's, you know, we knew that we wouldn't get everybody. Once we get our capacity up to the 500, which should happen in a couple of days at the latest, we'll do them bi-weekly as we have updates for everybody. And they don't, you know, the more often we do them, the less lengthy they need to be. So we don't want to eat up everybody's time. I know everybody's busy, but if it helps to just ask a question live, I know that's kind of for me. If I'm asking the question, it's the best format for me to get those kinds of answers. You know, it's true of kids, right? We just said that all night, that the engagement and interaction is the best way to transfer information. So we have to be true to that in our communication administratively. So every other week we'll do a meeting. Obviously we'll adjust around holiday schedules and things like that, but that's our goal. Generally speaking, Thursday evenings seem to be a good night. But if that's a night that doesn't work for a lot of people, we'll adjust that as well. And this is being recorded. The meetings are being recorded. So we'll post that on all the places that Mr. Damiano mentioned as well. Mrs. Cahill, you just need to make me the host again so that we